Detroit, a city of revival, music, and motion, but beneath its skyline, shadows still breathe. A home on Seminole Street, consumed by fire and vengeance. A surgeon's mansion hiding betrayal behind locked doors. A synagogue leader's doorstep turned to tragedy before dawn. Or a nurse's parking lot transformed into a silent abduction site. Each scene painted in blood and consequence. Each killer bound for decades behind bars, yet no sentence restores what's been taken. And this is Inside Detroit's Most Dangerous Black Killers, Shocking Murders, and True Crime Documentary. Welcome back to Crime Ledger USA, where real crimes meet real justice. Number 1. Cinamon Charmaine Rigmaiden. In Detroit, heartbreak didn't fade, it burned. And one night, that fire consumed more than love. On the 3rd of June 2024, a quiet home on Seminole Street became the center of a horrifying crime that would leave one woman dead and 2 others injured. 31-year-old Cinamon Charmaine Rigmaiden, from Livonia, was accused of setting fire to her ex-boyfriend's family home in retaliation after their breakup. The victim, 53-year-old Tina Dorff, was her ex's mother, partially paralyzed and unable to flee when the flames erupted. Investigators said the tragedy unfolded late that night, beginning with Rigmaiden's growing anger and emotional instability following the end of her relationship. Surveillance footage placed her at a nearby gas station, purchasing 75 cents worth of gasoline, the fuel later used in the deadly arson. From there, she drove straight to Seminole Street, where 3 people were inside the home: Dorff, her brother, and his partner. Roughly 30 minutes before the fire, she had allegedly spoken with the uncle outside, confirming their presence inside. Just after 11:15 p.m., Rigmaiden poured gasoline on a couch on the porch and struck a flame. Fire rapidly spread through the wood structure, devouring the walls and cutting off escape routes. Witnesses told investigators they saw her standing near her car, watching the blaze grow. Instead of calling 911, she sent a text message to her ex-boyfriend that read, "Your house is on fire," before leaving the scene. Within minutes, the home became a furnace of smoke and heat. Inside, the uncle's partner leapt from a second-floor window to survive, breaking her ankle on the lawn below. The uncle escaped through a back exit but couldn't reach Dorff, who was trapped upstairs. Firefighters from Detroit and Hamtramck battled the inferno for nearly an hour. When they finally entered the home, they discovered Dorff deceased at the second-floor landing, her body partially shielded by a collapsed railing. The 2 survivors were rushed to the hospital with serious injuries. Investigators quickly ruled the cause as arson. Evidence collected from the porch and charred debris revealed gasoline residue matching the fuel purchased earlier that night. Detectives from Detroit police traced the suspect's movements using surveillance footage and phone records, confirming her route from Livonia to the crime scene. Rigmaiden was arrested the following day and transferred to Detroit police custody. On June 7, she appeared before a Wayne County judge, charged with felony murder, assault with intent to murder, and multiple counts of arson. Rigmaiden pleaded not guilty, and her case remains pending in court. The public reaction was brief but sorrowful. Prosecutor Kim Worthy condemned the alleged act as senseless and cruel. Community members left flowers at the burned porch where the fire began, mourning a life lost to needless rage. 3 lessons endure. Heartbreak cannot excuse violence. Every impulse leaves permanent consequences, and revenge always widens the pain it seeks to inflict. Detroit remembers this night when love turned to fire and reason to ashes. Before we continue, if this case shakes you, press hype, stand with us, break silence, and let justice roar louder than the voices once erased. Number 2. Desmond Burks. The quiet restoration of a Detroit mansion became the scene of one of the city's most complex and disturbing crimes. In April 2023, 53-year-old neurosurgeon Dr. Devin Hoover, celebrated for his skill at Ascension Hospital, and admired in Detroit's Boston Edison Historic District, was found dead inside his own home. The man accused of killing him, 34-year-old Desmond Burks, had a prior criminal record and an intimate relationship with the doctor. Prosecutors allege Burks planned the murder to steal money and valuables after months of personal and financial tension. The two had communicated frequently, and phone records later revealed thousands of messages between them. Investigators believe the killing occurred after Hoover picked up Burks on April 22. Prosecutors stated Burks carried a 9mm handgun and deliberately left his phone behind to avoid tracking. Evidence presented in court showed that Hoover was shot twice in the head and his body later concealed inside his home. The next day, officers discovered Hoover's white Range Rover abandoned on Coyle Street with blood inside. Within minutes of Burks leaving the vehicle, fraudulent withdrawals began on Hoover's accounts. Nearly $30,000 was stolen, along with luxury watches and personal electronics. Burks allegedly used associates to move the money through digital transfers, and even ordered designer glasses with Hoover's credit card. Detectives followed a digital and physical trail stretching across 5 states and 3 countries. They examined 40 cell phones, reviewed over 100 warrants, and interviewed nearly 90 witnesses. One witness reported finding Hoover's engraved surgical glasses and a firearm inside a bag Burks left at their house. That weapon was later discarded in the Rouge River with the witness's assistance. Police connected fingerprints from Hoover's vehicle to Burks and recovered phone data showing Hoover's device traveling with Burks after the murder. On April 23, when Hoover failed to meet family for a trip to visit his ill mother, police performed a welfare check and found his body hidden inside the home. Burks was initially interviewed and released, but investigators continued gathering evidence. After his 2024 arrest in an unrelated case, prosecutors charged him with first-degree premeditated murder, felony murder, and multiple firearm and larceny offenses. A 4-day preliminary hearing concluded on the 26th of June 2025, when Judge Sean Jack ruled there was probable cause for trial. The defense insisted there was no direct proof of intent, citing Burks's physical limitations, but prosecutors argued the thefts and digital deception proved premeditation. The judge denied bond, and the case moved toward jury selection in January 2026. Public reaction focused on grief and disbelief. Friends and colleagues described Hoover as generous, disciplined, and deeply committed to restoring Detroit's heritage. His family expressed relief that the case is moving forward, calling it one step toward long overdue justice. 3 lessons endure. Hidden relationships can conceal dangerous motives. Greed often exposes itself through digital footprints. And justice, though slow, always follows the evidence. Detroit's medical community still mourns the healer, whose home became his final crime scene. Number 3. Michael Jackson-Bolanos. A quiet Detroit neighborhood awoke to tragedy when a respected community leader was found dead outside her home. Samantha Wool, 40, president of the Isaac Agree Downtown Synagogue, was murdered in October 2023, a crime that initially shook Detroit's Jewish community amid fears of a hate-driven killing. Investigators quickly clarified that the case bore no religious motive. Prosecutors alleged it was a random home invasion that spiraled into fatal violence, with 29-year-old Michael Jackson-Bolanos accused of breaking in and attacking her during an attempted robbery. The sequence began on October 20 when Wool attended a wedding. She returned home around 12:30 a.m., changed clothes, and settled in to watch Netflix before falling asleep on her couch. Investigators believe she had stepped outside briefly to vape, leaving her back door unlocked. At approximately 4 a.m., surveillance footage captured Jackson-Bolanos, just 150 feet away, checking car doors in the neighborhood. 20 minutes later, prosecutors say he entered through the unlocked door and startled Wool awake. The confrontation escalated into violence, with Wool stabbed multiple times in the neck and back of the head as she tried to flee. She stumbled outside before collapsing. Her phone and wallet remained untouched, suggesting robbery was interrupted by panic. At 6:30 a.m., a neighbor discovered her body, leading police to a scene marked by blood, trails back into the house. The investigation consumed hundreds of hours. Detectives initially detained Wall's former boyfriend, who had called police in distress claiming confusion from medication, but he was later cleared. Focus soon turned to Jackson-Bolanos, known for petty larcenies nearby. Security cameras showed him wearing blue gloves close to the time of the crime, and forensic analysis later identified Wall's blood on his jacket and backpack. Cell phone records placed him in the vicinity, and his repeated lies, more than 40 during questioning, deepened suspicion. He later admitted finding her body but said he did not call police because he feared being caught while breaking into cars. The trial opened with national attention. Jackson-Bolanos testified in his own defense, claiming he touched Wall only to check if she was alive. After days of deliberation, jurors acquitted him of first-degree murder but deadlocked on felony murder and home invasion. He was convicted only of lying to police. On the 9th of August 2024, Judge Margaret Van Houten dismissed the unresolved charges, citing federal double jeopardy precedent, and sentenced him to 18 months to 15 years for habitual lying to police. Prosecutors plan to appeal the dismissal, though he cannot be retried for murder. The verdict left Wall's family devastated, stating justice had not been served. Friends and city leaders remembered her for her kindness and service, her funeral drawing hundreds in mourning. 3 lessons endure. Violence often begins with small, reckless choices. Truth, when buried, resurfaces through evidence. And justice can falter under the weight of law itself. Detroit still mourns the leader whose life ended before dawn. Number 4. DeAngelo Lamar Davis. A routine patrol turned deadly in minutes, leaving Detroit searching for answers and a community mourning a fallen officer. On the 22nd of November 2016, Wayne State University police officer Colin Rose was working off campus in Detroit's Woodbridge neighborhood, responding to reports of vehicle break-ins near Lincoln and Brainerd. Rose, a 29-year-old canine officer known for proactive policing, encountered a man on a bicycle later identified as 31-year-old DeAngelo Lamar Davis. According to investigators, Rose initiated a traffic investigation and attempted to detain him. What came next became one of Detroit's most closely examined police shootings. At 6:31 p.m., Rose radioed for backup. Moments later, a gunshot was heard across the neighborhood. A fellow Wayne State officer arrived at 6:34 p.m. to find Rose down with a critical head wound. The suspect had fled on foot, leaving no firearm behind. Rose was rushed to Detroit Receiving Hospital, where trauma surgeons attempted to save him. Despite surgery and life support, Rose died the next evening at 5:35 p.m., marking the first line of duty death in the university's police department and triggering an intensive citywide manhunt. Police quickly focused on Davis. That night, he was arrested on unrelated misdemeanor warrants from 2011 and 2014. Investigators cited prior encounters between Davis and Wayne State officers, including a scuffle in which an officer suffered minor injuries. Detectives searched the Woodbridge area extensively, gathering surveillance video, interviewing witnesses, and releasing images of a potential witness seen nearby during the shooting. Officers canvassed the scene repeatedly, looking for ballistic evidence or the missing firearm, but no physical link to Davis emerged. By late November, Davis had been formally arraigned on charges including first-degree premeditated murder, murder of a police officer, felon in possession of a firearm, and 2 counts of felony firearm. He pleaded not guilty and was held without bond. Police continued to investigate the shooting intensely, but day after day, critical evidence tying Davis to the trigger failed to materialize. Despite extensive forensic efforts and interviews, Investigators could not place him at the precise moment of the shooting, and the firearm remained unrecovered. On the 7th of December 2016, just 15 days after Rose's death, prosecutors announced that all charges against Davis would be dismissed due to insufficient evidence. He was released the same day and cleared as a suspect. His attorney criticized the rapid escalation of the case, and Davis's family insisted he had been misidentified. For prosecutors, the lack of corroborating evidence left no legal path forward. The courtroom's announcement drew quiet grief from law enforcement. Vigils, tributes, and statewide messages of support honored Rose's service. Prosecutor Kim Worthy emphasized the dangers officers face daily, and Wayne State posthumously awarded Rose the final credit needed for his master's degree. 3 lessons stand out. Evidence must lead emotion in high-profile cases. Investigations require precision under pressure, and the risks officers face remain constant even during routine patrols. Detroit still remembers the night a promising officer made his final call. Number 5. Jamere Miller. Beneath the calm hum of Detroit's medical district, a tragedy unfolded that exposed the deadly consequences of possessive love turned violent. On the 13th of May 2023, 29-year-old nurse and mother Patrice Wilson finished her overnight shift at Detroit Receiving Hospital. As dawn broke, she walked across the parking lot to her black Lincoln Nautilus, unaware that her ex-boyfriend, 36-year-old Jamere Miller, lay in wait disguised in a wig, hat, and glasses. Wilson had recently ended their relationship. Police later confirmed that Miller had an extensive history of domestic violence and prior arrests. His actions that morning would shock the entire city. At approximately 7:40 a.m., Miller ambushed Wilson beside her car. Witnesses said he forced her into the passenger seat at gunpoint before driving away. Wilson had been speaking on her phone when the abduction occurred, and the person on the line heard her scream before the call cut off. Investigators determined that Miller later moved to the back passenger side of the SUV and fired several rounds, killing Wilson instantly. The abduction triggered a massive search effort, led by the Detroit Police Department's homicide, major crimes, and organized crime units. The following morning, May 14, police located Wilson's SUV parked at an apartment complex in Novi, nearly 30 miles from Detroit. Inside the trunk, officers discovered her body with multiple gunshot wounds. The crime scene revealed deliberate concealment, suggesting Miller had planned the killing. Detectives quickly executed several search warrants across Wayne County as Miller's name surfaced through prior domestic violence reports. Under growing pressure, Miller contacted his attorney and surrendered that afternoon at the Detroit Detention Center. He was initially held on unrelated drug and assault charges before prosecutors filed multiple counts, including first-degree murder, felony murder, armed robbery, carjacking, and firearm possession. Investigators also reopened questions about the 2011 disappearance of Bianca Chanel Green, the mother of Miller's child, though no new charges were filed. Detroit Police Chief James White called the case an example of extreme escalation following relationship separation. On the 10th of October 2023, Miller entered a guilty plea to second-degree murder as part of an agreement with the Wayne County Prosecutor's Office. In exchange, the most severe charges were dismissed. On November 7, Judge Kevin Cox sentenced him to 35 to 60 years in prison. During the hearing, Miller expressed remorse through a written statement read by his lawyer, admitting deep regret for taking Wilson's life. Wilson's family filled the courtroom in grief, describing her as a devoted mother and compassionate nurse. The case reignited discussion about domestic violence prevention and workplace safety. Detroit police confirmed that Wilson's murder was the 12th domestic violence-related homicide of 2023. Her family later filed a lawsuit against Detroit Medical Center, alleging negligent security procedures after her disappearance. 3 lessons stand clear. Leaving an abusive partner demands urgent protective measures. Prior violent history predicts escalation, and community vigilance can save potential victims. Her courage and kindness endure beyond the crime that took her life. Number 6. Shandon Ray Groom and Timothy Eugene Moore. A single mistake on a quiet summer night turned a robbery plot into one of Michigan's most haunting murders in recent years. Egypt Covington, a 27-year-old singer and beer distributor account manager, was found dead inside her home in Van Buren Township, about 28 miles from Detroit, on the 23rd of June 2017. Known for her bright personality and musical talent, Egypt's life ended in a senseless act of violence after 3 men broke into her duplex, entering the wrong side of the building during a robbery gone wrong. The men, Shandon Ray Groom, Timothy Eugene Moore, and Shane Lamar Evans, planned to steal marijuana from a neighbor who ran a legal grow operation. Evans, who worked as a maintenance man nearby, knew the layout of the complex and believed the target would be easy. That night, Groom and Moore followed Evans to the neighborhood. Evans stayed behind, directing them where to go. But the pair mistakenly entered Egypt's unit instead of her neighbor's. Inside, Egypt sat on her couch watching a movie. Within minutes, she was bound with Christmas string lights, gagged, and shot in the head. The men fled the scene, stealing her phone before driving away. Cell phone data later revealed Egypt's phone pinged alongside Groom and Moore's devices, confirming their connection. Evans received a message soon after. "Do you want to know what happened?" He refused to answer. Egypt's boyfriend discovered her body that evening, and the case quickly drew local attention for its brutality and mystery. For 3 years, the investigation went cold. Local police focused on an ex-boyfriend, but the Covington family refused to let the case fade. They organized rallies, called state officials, and demanded new oversight. In August 2020, the Michigan State Police took over the investigation, and within months, arrests followed. Moore and Evans were captured in November and Groom in December. Evidence from GPS tracking and text messages tied all 3 men directly to the murder scene. All 3 suspects eventually accepted plea deals for second-degree murder, avoiding the death penalty. In May 2023, Evans pleaded guilty and received 15 to 25 years, agreeing to testify against the others. Groom followed with a 17 to 26-year sentence. Moore, who fired the fatal shot, was sentenced to 20 to 55 years after an emotional hearing in October 2023. He initially denied full responsibility, claiming pressure during his plea, before apologizing in court. The Covington family attended every hearing. Egypt's father described how his daughter was hogtied with holiday lights and executed, calling the act diabolical. Her sister demanded the maximum punishment, saying people capable of such cruelty should never walk free. The case became a rallying cry for community persistence in demanding justice when systems fail. 3 lessons endure. Evil can hide in ordinary motives. Perseverance from families can change stalled cases. And one wrong address can destroy countless lives. Egypt Covington's story remains a powerful reminder that justice, though delayed, can still speak for the silenced. Number 7. Michael Craig Lackey. Under the cold November sky, silence shattered on Detroit's west side when anger turned deadly over a year-old feud. Michael Craig Lackey, a 59-year-old resident of Robson Street, stood accused of killing his 61-year-old neighbor, Michelle Elder, a woman he had once known, but now viewed through the lens of resentment. Their conflict began a year earlier when an Amazon package was mistakenly delivered to Elder's home. The dispute escalated into a misdemeanor charge against Lackey, resulting in a 60-day jail term. After his release, that brief sentence became a lasting grudge. At 6:47 a.m., on the 17th of November 2022, Detroit police were dispatched to the 8500 block of Robson Street, following reports of gunfire. When officers arrived, They discovered Elder lying face down on the pavement, a gunshot wound to her head, ending her life instantly. Shell casings nearby hinted at close range. Neighbors described hearing a single sharp crack before quiet returned, the kind of silence that settles only after violence. Moments later, the suspect was identified as Lackey. Instead of fleeing, he retreated into his home, locking the doors and beginning a tense standoff. Inside, police believed he had access to an arsenal. Detroit Police Chief James White later confirmed that Lackey possessed at least 9 registered handguns and several weapons capable of long-range fire, described as military-grade. The special response team surrounded the residence while negotiators tried to reach Lackey. As hours passed, authorities expanded the perimeter, ordering residents to shelter in place or evacuate. Patrol cars blocked intersections. Armored vehicles took positions on both ends of the street. From nearby yards, officers shouted commands, but the only reply was silence behind drawn blinds. The crisis negotiation team continued its efforts, communicating through phone and loudspeaker. Relatives were contacted and urged to help calm the situation. Nearly 4.5 hours later, the standoff ended without bloodshed. Lackey surrendered peacefully, walking out with his hands raised, unarmed. Officers moved in, cuffed him, and secured the property. Inside, investigators located multiple firearms stored throughout the home. Detectives from the Detroit Police Homicide Unit began reconstructing the timeline. Witness statements and surveillance footage pointed to a single motive: retaliation for the prior court case. Prosecutors argued that Elder's earlier testimony in the misdemeanor dispute had humiliated Lackey, and the shooting was a calculated act of revenge. Forensic evidence tied the recovered handgun to the bullet found at the scene, and ballistic tests confirmed the match. Lackey was arraigned on the 20th of November 2022 before the 36th District Court on charges of first-degree premeditated murder, retaliating against a witness, and 2 felony firearm violations. He was denied bond and remanded to jail pending trial. The case drew brief attention citywide for its senseless nature, a neighborhood dispute spiraling into homicide. Chief White thanked the community for cooperation and patience during the lockdown, while Elder's family requested privacy in mourning. 3 lessons remain. Unchecked anger breeds irreversible acts, grudges turn ordinary people into offenders, and weapons magnify every emotion into fatal consequences. Justice seeks truth. Peace demands memory. Detroit remembers. Number 8. Desaun Travon Ross. Under the pale February sky, love's holiday became a morning of terror when devotion turned into deadly obsession on Detroit's west side. Desaun Travon Ross, a 31-year-old Detroit man, was accused of killing his girlfriend, 29-year-old Ebony Robinson, on Valentine's Day, the 14th of February 2025. Prosecutors said the fatal encounter began as a heated argument inside Robinson's car and ended with a barrage of bullets on Washburn Street, near Santa Clara. The alleged motive was chilling in its simplicity. Ross claimed he wanted to stop her from suffering. At approximately 9 a.m., Detroit police received multiple 911 calls reporting gunfire and a vehicle crash in the 17400 block of Washburn. Responding officers arrived to find Robinson's car smashed into the front porch of a nearby home, its frame riddled with bullet holes. Inside, Robinson was slumped over the steering wheel, suffering multiple gunshot wounds. She was pronounced dead at the scene. According to the police investigation, the argument began moments earlier while the couple sat inside Robinson's car. The verbal dispute quickly escalated when Ross stepped out, drew a handgun, and fired several shots through the driver's side window. The barrage struck Robinson as she tried to drive away, but she lost control and crashed across the street. Witnesses described hearing 2 distinct bursts of gunfire separated by a brief pause, followed by the sound of the crash. What happened next pushed the crime further into brutality. Investigators said Ross retrieved a rifle after the initial shooting and fired multiple rounds through the shattered driver's window, striking Robinson fatally in the head. Detectives later stated that Ross admitted the second round of shots was intended to end her suffering. After the shooting, Ross fled to a nearby residence, barricading himself inside with his firearm. The Detroit Police Department's Special Response Team surrounded the property, initiating a tense standoff that lasted several hours. Negotiators made repeated attempts to communicate as officers cleared neighboring homes. Residents along the block were ordered to shelter in place or stay away until the threat subsided. Patrol units blocked the surrounding intersections while tactical officers held positions, preparing for any escalation. As the standoff entered its fourth hour, Ross surrendered peacefully. Police confirmed he was taken into custody without further violence. During his arrest, investigators recovered multiple firearms, including the rifle used in the killing. Prosecutors later said Ross confessed on police body camera footage to shooting Robinson, repeating that he had done it to stop her pain. Ross was arraigned on the 16th of February 2025 before Magistrate Laura Ecartia in the 36th District Court. He was charged with first-degree murder and felony firearm possession. The judge denied bond, ordering him held in the Wayne County Jail pending trial. The community expressed brief shock at the violence, while officials urged domestic violence victims to seek help before conflict turns fatal. 3 lessons emerge. Unchecked anger destroys love, firearms amplify every impulse, and silence in crisis costs more than words ever could. Detroit still remembers the sound of that Valentine's morning. Number 9. Jarvis Butts. Beneath a gray Detroit sky, a quiet January afternoon became the beginning of a nightmare that would shock an entire city. Nazia Harris vanished on the 9th of January 2024, after stepping off her school bus near her home on the city's east side. Her grandmother reported her missing that evening when she failed to return. The next morning, investigators launched a search that would soon expose a web of manipulation, exploitation, and murder. The prime suspect was 41-year-old Jarvis Butts, a registered sex offender who had fathered children with Nazia's aunt. Prosecutors later charged him with first-degree premeditated murder, second-degree criminal sexual conduct, and possession of child sexually abusive material. According to investigators, Butts began grooming Nazia in 2022, sending her explicit text messages and requesting photos. Phone records revealed hundreds of exchanges showing sexual conversations between the two. In September 2023, Nazia texted Butts that she had missed her period. By November, he knew she was pregnant. Police said Butts searched online for abortion methods, abortion pills, and drinking red antifreeze just weeks before she disappeared. On the day Nazia went missing, surveillance footage and phone data traced her movements from her school to a nearby auto shop where Butts worked. Witnesses saw her entering his car that afternoon. By 9:30 p.m., Butts checked into a Detroit-area motel. Cell records placed both his phone and hers at that location. She was never seen again. The next day, detectives tracked his phone to the Rouge River area, where they later found the clothing Nazia had worn that day, damaged in a way that suggested a violent struggle. Detroit police and Wayne County investigators pieced together a timeline using digital forensics, hotel receipts, and extensive video evidence, totaling more than 100 gigabytes. They concluded Butts had sexually assaulted, impregnated, and ultimately killed Nazia to conceal the pregnancy. Her body has not been recovered, but prosecutors stated that the evidence proves she is deceased beyond a reasonable doubt. The investigation also revealed that Butts targeted other children over the years. He was charged in 2 additional cases involving victims under the age of 13, dating back to 2012 and 2015. Prosecutor Kim Worthy called him a serial predator. who cultivated relationships with women to gain access to their daughters. Butts had previously served nearly a decade in prison for criminal sexual conduct with a minor between the ages of 13 and 15. During the preliminary hearing in January 2025, detectives, family members, and children testified. Evidence included text messages read aloud in court and testimony from an 8-year-old relative who said Butts repeatedly took them to his workplace, where assaults occurred. After several days of proceedings, the judge bound Butts over for trial, remarking that several people failed her. Butts remains held without bond at the Wayne County Jail, awaiting trial in 2025. 3 lessons remain. Predators exploit trust before they destroy it. Technology exposes hidden crimes, and ignoring warning signs invites tragedy. Justice moves slowly, but the truth endures. Number 10. Floyd Galloway. Under the gray Michigan sky, a young woman's ordinary Friday commute turned into one of the state's most haunting mysteries. On the 2nd of December 2016, 28-year-old Danielle Stislicki left her job at a MetLife office in Southfield and vanished before she could make it home to Farmington Hills. A friendly, ambitious woman with plans that night, she never arrived. Police say her killer was someone she knew, Floyd Galloway Jr., a 32-year-old security guard who worked in her building. Investigators say Galloway's connection to Danielle began through work, where he occasionally flirted and once sent her flowers. But just months before she disappeared, he had violently attacked a jogger in Livonia's Hines Park, an assault he later admitted was sexually motivated. He was already serving a prison sentence for that crime when murder charges were filed. The day Danielle vanished, Galloway called off work under false pretenses. Witnesses saw him in the parking lot, with his car hood up, while others later reported seeing him in the passenger seat of Danielle's Jeep Renegade as she drove away. Around 8 p.m., her phone pinged along the route between Galloway's home and her apartment. At 8:40 p.m., security cameras caught him inside a Tim Hortons near her complex, using a payphone. About 20 minutes later, a cab driver picked him up nearby and dropped him off close to his workplace. The next day, Danielle's Jeep was discovered parked neatly outside her apartment. Her purse, ID, and wallet were inside, but her phone and keys were missing. Detectives searching Galloway's Berkeley home found a freshly replaced carpet section and a new comforter bought 2 days after she vanished. Forensic testing revealed traces of Danielle's DNA on the old carpet, providing what experts described as very strong support that she had been inside that home. The investigation expanded into one of the largest in Farmington Hills history, with 77 search warrants executed and dozens of agencies involved. Although early requests for prosecution were denied, the Attorney General's office took over in 2019 and filed charges. Evidence showed cell tower data, security footage, and digital trails tying Galloway to the night of Danielle's disappearance. Still, key materials, including her Fitbit, phone data, and surveillance records, were later suppressed after a court ruled police had violated attorney-client privilege during a polygraph incident. Despite this, prosecutors insisted the remaining evidence was compelling. Galloway remains imprisoned for his previous assault conviction, serving 16 to 35 years. His earliest release date is set for June 2033, and the murder trial for Danielle's case is scheduled for February 2026. The ruling left the Stislicki family heartbroken but resolute. They continue to push for justice and the recovery of Danielle's remains, saying her story represents hope for all missing women whose cases rely on evidence rather than a body. 3 lessons stand out. Predators often hide in plain sight. Justice can survive without a body. And truth always endures persistence. Even in silence, her name demands justice. And that concludes tonight's journey deep inside Detroit's darkest crimes, stories where obsession, greed, and vengeance left echoes that still haunt the city. But this is only the beginning. Because every street has another secret, every name is another story waiting to surface from the shadows. If you believe justice deserves to be heard, hit subscribe and ring the notification bell. Be the first to uncover Detroit's next chilling truth here on Crime Ledger USA. Stay alert, stay curious.